Hey guys, we yet again have a new GPU launch and this one is from Team Red. It is AMD Radeon RX 6500 XT, a $199 card that is going to be saving us all and finally giving gamers what they've been waiting for, a proper budget GPU. Or at least that's what they want us to believe. From what I've seen and heard so far, these cards will not be anywhere near the MSRP, but rather at least 50% more expensive. That being said, there is a silver lining in all of this. There appears to be high quantity of these cards coming, and they are not going to be particularly interesting for professional miners. More on that later on. Let's jump right in, and if you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. Before we get into the performance numbers, let's have a look at this particular card. This is the Asus TUF Gaming RX 6500 XT OC Edition. It features dual fan design and has your standard switch for performance or quiet modes, some RGB and pretty hefty heatsink. Since this card is pretty low end, it only features two outputs, single DisplayPort as well as single HDMI 2.1 port, which to be honest is all that most people need. One thing that may not be obvious for many people is that it's running over 4 lanes of PCIe Gen 4, even though it features x16 connection. If you look really closely, there are no traces on 3/4 of the PCIe connector. For power, this particular card is using only a single 6-pin connector. As far as internals are concerned, AMD is calling this the fastest clocked gaming graphics card ever, with frequencies hitting 2.6 GHz, which to be fair makes sense as it's a smaller die and they can push it much harder without generating as much heat. The specs of this card include 16 compute units as well as 16 ray accelerators and 1024 stream processors. Boost clocks just passed 2.8 GHz and 4 GB of GDDR6 memory. This card is also featuring 16 MB of Infinity Cache and total board power of 120 watts. Just like other cards in the 6000 series, it also features DirectX 12 Ultimate, ray tracing to a degree, as well as Fidelity FX Super Resolution. I feel the latter feature is probably going to be the most relevant in this tier. In their notes, AMD mentions that this card is ideal for 1080p gaming and then immediately mentions games that run on lower spec equipment, such as Fortnite, Apex Legends and Overwatch. They also recommended many games to have settings start at medium rather than ultra presets, so that should set the stage. In our case, to keep results consistent with previously tested graphics cards, we're keeping maxed out settings where possible, unless specified otherwise. This should provide an idea where this card stacks up. All the tests were carried out on our Ryzen 9 5950X test bench without any special features like Smart Access Memory or FSR enabled, just raw performance. We have a number of different cards here, including most of the mid-range from AMD. Jumping into benchmarks, starting with Doom Eternal. Here we had to adjust the settings to high profile due to VRAM limitations. RX 6500 XT is marginally better than 1060, but is 66% slower on average FPS in comparison to RX 6600. All things considered, it is still around 100 FPS, which is pretty good experience. Next up is a much more demanding game, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. In this game we were able to maintain the highest settings and still get 60 FPS on average and 55 for 1 percentiles. I would consider this a pass, but only just. Going up to 6600 or 2060 would provide a considerable improvement on your experience though. Another demanding game is Total War 3 Kingdoms, and here 6500 XT is actually doing slightly worse than GTX 1060 on average FPS in both setups. I'd recommend lowering the settings to reach 60 average FPS for smoother gameplay. Last standard rasterized game is Horizon Zero Dawn. We were just shy of 60 average FPS, and considering this game can have moments where it's fast paced, this is not going to be a great experience. So to have more fluid gameplay, you have to either reduce the settings or enable FSR. We did a quick test with FSR set to quality and found results being not that far away from RTX 2060. But of course the game in this case is upscaled with its own quirks, and other cards can do the same to gain more performance. Moving on to some ray traced games. First we have the Riftbreaker, and while this card is lagging behind most others, due to its RT cores it's still able to run playable frame rates and would have reasonable experience. Lastly we have Godfall, where you can just end it. Performance here is just simply really bad. Don't even think about using ray tracing on this game without RX 6600 XT or RTX 3060. For those interested in this Asus version of the card, we did some thermal and acoustic tests. During the test, our room temperature was 22 degrees Celsius and the room noise floor was 30.5 dBA. The measurement distance from the test bench is 50 centimeters. We turned on Thermark stress test to warm it up and left it there to soak until it stabilized. RX 6500 XT peaked at only 49 degrees with maximum noise level of 31.5 dBA. It was so quiet that the car noises from the outside were hindering the test, so I had to redo them a few times. I did mention earlier that this card has a very high frequency, and during firmware it did run past 2.6 GHz and bounced between 2.5 and 2.7, which is pretty crazy. I just wish it had more power overall. To quickly summarize, this is a graphics card. It does graphics things. However, it is not suitable for any heavy 1080p AAA titles at max settings. It is best for moderately demanding games at medium to high settings where it competes with a lot of last generation cards. It may be worth checking out the used market and see what else you can pick up. In general, these cards will be more available, and as I mentioned earlier, they will likely to be less interesting for professional miners. And there are a few reasons for this. First of all, it only has 4GB of VRAM, which is no longer suitable for Ethereum mining. Of course, there are many other coins, but majority is still mining Ethereum. Second biggest reason is physical space. Since professional miners are optimizing everything under the sun, this includes the amount of cards you can fit in a given area, as well as many devices you need to clean, maintain, and replace over time. Having a low-power GPU like this just simply does not make sense. To all of you who are looking for a low-end, lowish priced GPU, this is an extra option on the market. But if you're looking for something a bit more powerful, then I recommend either wait until you have some competition from Intel or look at the cards a few tiers up. If you want to check out this card further, the link in the description below. I hope you found this useful. Don't forget to smash that thumbs up and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys in the next one.